Good morning. So let's start this quick summary about the history of Islam. First of all, we should talk about how was Arabia before Muhammad. Muhammad was born in 570 by the end of the 6th century. So by that time, we had that the Arabian Peninsula was occupied by some empires like the Ghassanids and the Lakhmids, and then the biggest territory of what today we know as Arabia was not a country as we think as countries today. It was just, let's say, a big extension of land with many different tribes that were independent and that were many times fighting each other. So it was a big extension. This side, let's say the western side, was more fertile. So this is where the fertile plains were, and then the rest of the land was a big desert. And in this desert, as I said, there were some tribes, and many of them were enemies. In the north, we have, besides the Ghassanids and the Lakhmids, we have the big Byzantine Empire. We all know about how powerful it was, the heirs of the Roman Empire. And then we have to the east the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire, the Sassanid dynasty, it was also a big and powerful empire. The Byzantine Empire and the Persians were always fighting each other. Okay, so they didn't take basically any account of the Arabs from the desert because, in their opinion, they were just some Bedouin tribes fighting all the time and trading and stuff like that, but not really dangerous. Now let's see what happens. This is how Saudi Arabia is today, and this is the city of Mecca. Muhammad was born in 570 in the city of Mecca. So Mecca was a place of trading. Traders from all over the place came to Mecca to sell and buy at the marketplace, and also they brought their own culture, their own languages, their own religions. So it was a cross point. Mecca was a cross point, and in the middle of Mecca there was this sanctuary called the Kaaba. And in the Kaaba, people used to worship many different gods, not less than 360 gods. So there was a plenty of fetishes or idols, statues like these ones, that represented different gods, different beliefs. So it was, as I said, a melting point, a cross center for many different cultures and many different tribes. Well, now Muhammad came up, and by the year 610, he claimed that he had some visions as he was praying. He used to retire from the city and went to a cave in Mount Hira, near the city of Mecca. And in this cave, allegedly, he had visions of an angel. And this angel, who allegedly it was Gabriel told him to read the word of God. Well, Muhammad was illiterate, so he couldn't read, but the real message was that he was going to be the recipient of some revelations directly from God through the angel Gabriel, and that he should preach those revelations. So from that point, that was around year 610, he started preaching Islam. Now, Mecca was a city of merchants. As I said before, many people from different cultures, different religions came over. And when Muhammad came up with this message about one single God, monotheistic vision, then many rich men from Mecca, many businessmen from Mecca, thought that was going to be the ruin of their business, because if polytheistic is not welcome anymore, then many people are not going to come to Mecca to trade and to make business, and that meant the ruin of the business. So he didn't gain many followers in Mecca. As a matter of fact, he gained several enemies, even inside his own clan and family. And that's why he decided to flee from Mecca to a city called Medina. This is called the Egira. Egira means escape, so he escaped with some followers. Apparently, his followers went first to Medina, and then he stayed in Mecca for a time, and then he joined his followers in that city, in Medina. Back then, that city was called Yathrib. But after Islam was established, it was known as Medina al-Nabi, meaning the city of the Prophet. Well, the Egira, the flee from Mecca, happened in 622. And that is a very important date because it marks the beginning of Islamic calendar, which is a lunar calendar, by the way. So this is the way from Mecca to Medina. So this is what they did by camelback. Today there is a high-speed train from Mecca to Medina, so that would be much more comfortable. But back then, we are talking about the year 622. They had to go either walking or even camelback. Okay, then in Medina he gained many followers. He even recruited an army. He became a very prestigious man, and he decided to come back to Mecca and conquest the city. And that's what he did in 629 with his army. So many people were forced to convert to Islam. Some other people were convinced to turn into Islam, and some other people decided to keep their own religions. But if you were going to keep your own religions, like let's say Jews or Christians, then you had to pay a special tax that was called the jizya. We will come back to this later. And now let's explain a few things about the foundations of Islam. These are what they call the 5 pillars of Islam. So if you are familiar with Christianity, in Christianity there is something that they call the 10 Commandments. So 10 things you are supposed to do if you are a good Christian. Where in Islam, there are 5 things you are supposed to do. 5 main things you are supposed to do if you are a good Muslim. These are the Testament of Faith, basically that you have to believe in no God but Allah, and you have to believe that Muhammad was his prophet, his messenger. Then the prayer, they have to pray they have to pray 5 times a day, depending on the time of the day. Then you have to fast during the month of Ramadan. That means no drinking water or no eating any food during the month of Ramadan from sunrise to sunset. Also, there is another pillar, which is the alms giving. So basically it's giving money to the poor people. And the last one is what they call the Hajj, which is the pilgrimage. That means that you must go to the city of Mecca on a pilgrimage, to the city where the Prophet was born, at least once in a lifetime. You are excused of doing that if your health is not good enough, if for medical conditions, or if you cannot afford the trip. Because if you are a Muslim and you live, let's say, in Australia, that would be a very, very long trip and expensive. So if you cannot afford it, then you are excused on fulfilling this pillar. Then the holy book of the Muslims is the Quran. Quran means basically recitation, which is what Muhammad was asked to do, and is directly, according to the Islamic tradition, is the word of God directly. It's not someone telling what God did or someone telling what the Son of God did. It's the word of God itself. Okay. Then they became strong in the city of Mecca, and they started conquering new lands. Many soldiers from Muhammad's army were Bedouins, and Bedouins, although they converted to Islam, they also wanted wealth, and the only way they could keep this army working was by giving the soldiers land and some kind of wealth. So that's why they expanded on the first time through gaining lands for the soldiers and through spreading the new religion. Now, after Muhammad died in 632, there was some kind of a struggle for power. Who was going to be the next leader of the Islamic nation? Well, there were several candidates, and eventually they decided to appoint a caliph. A caliph means successor, so successor of Muhammad. And the first caliph was Abu Bakr, who was a close friend to Muhammad, and he was also his father-in-law. So that was the beginning of what they call Orthodox Caliphate. This caliphate was not a dynasty; it was elective. So the system of succession was elective. Well, then the first caliph was, as I said, Abu Bakr, and this is the extension they had. So it was quite impressive that they went from here, from having just a point here in Mecca and Medina, from this small area, to have this in only 30 years. In only 30 years, they expanded their empire. It became an empire, Islamic empire, from the city of Mecca and Medina to control all the Arabian Peninsula, part of the Byzantine Empire, basically all of the Persian Empire, which was impressive, and also several areas in the north of Africa, Egypt, and what today is Libya, and many other places in the coast. All right, these are the four caliphs that formed the Orthodox Caliphate. As I said, it was not hereditary, it was elective, so that means that the first one was Abu Bakr, but Omer or Oman was not the son of Abu Bakr, but a different guy, so and he was elected. So we had Abu Bakr, then we have Omar, then we have Osman or Uthman, and finally we have Ali. And here is where controversy starts, because not everybody wanted, for example, Usman as be the caliph, and not everybody wanted Ali to be the caliph. Ali, by the way, was Muhammad's son-in-law and cousin. So there were many fightings, many battles between the supporters of Ali and the supporters of Uthman. By the way, Uthman belonged to the Umayyad family that is going to become important in a while. And Ali was a very good general, and he won several battles. For example, the Battle of the Camel. In the Battle of the Camel that happened in 656, Ali defeated Aisha. Aisha was Muhammad's daughter. So it's called the Battle of the Camel because Aisha watched the whole battle, allegedly riding her camel as her troops and Ali's troops fought each other. Eventually, Ali won. And there was another battle, which is the Battle of Siffin on 657. And then Ali fought Muawiyah, who was the candidate of the Umayyads, who was a suitor from the Umayyad family. So nobody won the battle, nobody was winning the battle, and there was something that happened is that the Umayyad army, the Muawiyah army, apparently put some pages of the Quran on the point of their spears, on the point of their lances, and that was a symbol that was symbolizing that what are we doing fighting if we all are Muslims? So they decided to stop the battle and ask for an arbitration. Arbitration means that some kind of wise man will decide who is the winner instead of keep fighting until someone defeats the other. So the arbitration was favorable to Muawiyah, and then he became the first caliph of the Umayyad dynasty. And this time the dynasty is going to be hereditary. So there is going to be a bloodline inside the Umayyad dynasty, inside the Umayyad family, and the position of caliph will go from father to son. Well, this led to the Great Schism of Islam, which it still exists today. And it happened that Islam was divided into three branches. We have the Sunnis on one side. The Sunnis were the supporters of the Umayyad dynasty, the supporters of Muawiyah. Today they are up to more or less 80% of all the Muslims. So the majority branch of Islam today is the Sunni Islam. Then the Shiites, or Shia Islam, they were the supporters of Ali. They were Ali supporters. And then the Harijites were, at the beginning, they were Ali supporters, but they didn't agree with the arbitration. They didn't want to subject the battle to an arbitration, so they wanted to keep fighting until Allah showed who was the winner of the battle. So that's why they separated, and they were angry at Ali because Ali apparently accepted the arbitration, and eventually some people from the tribe from the sect of the Kharijites killed Ali. And as I said, these three branches of Islam still exist today. The Sunnis, which are up to 85%, the Shiites, which are up to, let's say, 10%, and they are strong in countries like Iran and some areas of Iraq, some areas of Lebanon, but especially in Iran. And the Kharijites are strong in a country that is called Oman, at the south of the Arabian Peninsula. Then, this is the social pyramid of Islam, or Islamic society, or Islamic empire under the Umayyad dynasty. So, at the top of the pyramid, we have the Arabs, basically born Muslims. Also, the Mawali. The Mawali was composed of people who converted to Islam from a different religion, mostly Christians and Jews. And these two groups together, they formed the Ummah. The Ummah is the community of believers. In other words, all the Muslims of the world form the Ummah. Okay, then there were the Dhimmis. The Dhimmis were people who wanted to keep their religion, like, again, Christians and Jews who decided not to convert to the new religion, and they could live inside the Umayyads territories, but they had to pay this special tax called the jizya if they wanted to preserve their religion. That's why many people actually, at the end of the day, converted to Islam, because they didn't want to pay that tax. And then there were slaves. Normally these slaves were prisoners of war, and they were released in general when the master passed away. This is the Umayyad family tree. It lasted from 661 to 751. This is Muawiyah, the one we were talking about. Then the position of Caliph went to some other people from his family, but anyway, it was a dynasty because all of them were Umayyads. And over here, by year 744, there was what we call the Abbasid revolution. Another clan, another big family, fought the Umayyads and dethroned the Umayyad Caliph. Basically, the Abbasids decided to kill all the Umayyads, but one of them could flee from the bloodshed and made all his way to the Iberian Peninsula. And in the Iberian Peninsula, he founded an emirate that eventually became the Caliphate of Cordoba. All right, we are not going to go through that way, but I'm just want to tell you as a little introduction that guy, the Prince Al-Rahman I, was the last of the Umayyads, the one who survived the bloodshed, and the one who went all the way through the north of Africa to the Iberian Peninsula, where he founded an Umayyad Emirate. Eventually, that emirate became a caliphate under Abderrahman III, and then it went on and on until the end of the Islamic presence in the Iberian Peninsula. By the way, that Islamic caliphate was called Al-Andalus. The Islamic section of Spain was called Al-Andalus, and that is a fascinating history, but we are not going to go that way today. So, this was the expansion of the Islamic Empire. This is the biggest expansion that was achieved under the Umayyad Caliphate. So, at the beginning, in Muhammad times, they conquered basically what the Arabian Peninsula is. Then, with the Orthodox Caliphate, they extend their territories to Mesopotamia and south of the Byzantine Empire, Persia, Egypt, north of Africa, and then with the Umayyad Caliphate, they achieved their maximum expansion. All the north of Africa, what today we call the Maghreb, the countries like Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, the Iberian Peninsula too, parts of the south of France, and to the east, the whole Persian Empire until the Indus Valley, mostly. The Umayyads moved their capital from Mecca to Damascus. Damascus was very close to the Mediterranean Sea, and it was located in the center of their big empire. A much more appropriated capital city if you want to control the trade of the Mediterranean, and if you want to be in the center of the empire. This is the big mosque of the Umayyads, one of the most important and representative buildings of Islamic history. It was built on top of a Christian church, the Church of St. John the Baptist, and as I said, it's one of the most representative buildings in Islam. In 732, the Battle of Poitiers took place here in Poitiers, France. So the armies, the Umayyad armies from the Iberian Peninsula decided to move north, and they wanted to take over what today is France, and they attacked the Franks. This was the Frankish kingdom, and they were defeated. They were defeated in 732 by Charles Martel, or Charles the Hammer, who was Charlemagne's grandfather. Charles the Hammer defeated completely the Muslim army in this battle, and that's why they decided to retreat, and they never invaded France. On the east, there was also a big battle in Kashgar, with what today is in China. And in that battle, the Umayyads were also defeated, and that's why they didn't expand their empire farther to the east. Okay, so these are the two battles that, let's say, mark the biggest expansion of the Islamic Empire under the Umayyads, because they couldn't expand more since they were defeated. In Kashgar, this area today is the area of the Uyghurs, which are Muslim Chinese. Okay, then the political organization of the Umayyads looks like this. On top of the pyramid was the Caliph, who was supposed to be the successor of Muhammad. Then governors of the provinces were known as Qoras, and there were 9 Qoras. And there were 2 types of governors, the Wali and the Qaid. The Qaid was more like a military governor, and the Wali was a governor in the sense of politics, more in the sense of politics. Then, under the Wali was the Qadi, who was a judge. He was a supreme judge, and he based the Islamic law under the precepts of the Quran. So it's a kind of religion, politics, and law were closely united. And the Quranic law is called the Sharia, and that's why the Qadi applied when he had to judge some people. Then there was also the figure of the ulama. The ulama was an expert in the Quran, so he could give advice and he could give some counsel regarding religious matters. An expert on Islam, a wise man of Islam, was a ulama. They created also a currency, the dinar, the gold dinar, and the silver dirham. And they are still used today. This currency, okay, not made out of gold or silver, but still in some places they use the dinar and the dirham in the Islamic world. So this means that they created a very solid system of economy and finances and trade. So these are the trading routes, the most relevant trading routes, and as you can see in this map, they basically organized trade routes through all the known world, because you have to keep in mind that this is 7th and 8th century, and America wasn't known yet for these people, or Australia was not known for these people yet. So this map shows that they basically traded with all the known world. Main products were gold, silver, expensive products obviously, copper, and fabrics like silk, leather, and perfumes, and precious gems, and also ivory that they took from elephants, and some other minerals like tin or iron, and obviously slaves that were normally taken as prisoners of war. Then, as I told you before, by the year 644-646, the Abbasid revolution started. They killed all the Umayyads, so they defeated completely the Umayyads, and that's why Prince Abdal-Rahman had to flee, and he got to the Iberian Peninsula, as I told you before. Now, the Abbasids are going to start a new dynasty. They are going to move their capital from Damascus to Baghdad because they were fond of the Persian way of life. And the Umayyads were defeated because somehow they were Arabic supremacists, and even though there were many other types of Muslims like Berbers or the Mawalis that converted from different religions, they placed always the Arab people on the highest positions, especially when they created an Arab elite that could occupy important positions in politics and bureaucracy. So the Abbasids were more, let's say, mystic, more concerned about the religious precepts, and they defeated the Umayyads because they thought, or they claimed, that the Umayyads were moving away to the real message of the Quran. Okay, so they moved their capital to Baghdad, but as the Umayyad Caliphate figured it out how to keep the whole territory, the whole empire united, under the Abbasids there were so many divisions, fragmentations, wars, and tribes and people claiming their independence and invading some other territories, etc., etc. In this map, you can see the fragmentation, the big fragmentation of the Umayyad, of the Abbasid Caliphate. Okay, the tribes like the Bujiyes or the Tuluniyes or the Fatimis or the Aghlabis, the Umayyads in the Iberian Peninsula that were there from the beginning, etc., etc. And this fragmentation on several kingdoms and empire and sects eventually put an end to the Abbasid dynasty. They were, by the year 1015, one of the Abbasid caliphs hired a personal guard made out of Turk soldiers. But he didn't know that they were going to betray him. These soldiers were ferocious and very good warriors, but they were not loyal to the caliph. This caliph was Al-Mutasim. And basically what they did was to keep the caliph on his place as a puppet. I mean, in theory, the caliph was the main ruler, the shadow of God on earth, as they used to call him. But in practice, these Turk soldiers were the one who ruled. Well, eventually the Abbasid dynasty went on under the rule of these Turks, but by the year 1258 there was a Mongol invasion, and Hulagu Khan took over Baghdad and killed the last of the Abbasid caliphs, and that was the total end of the Abbasid dynasty. This happened on 1258. And the conquest of Baghdad was done by Hulagu Khan, who was, by the way, a grandson of the famous Genghis Khan. The political organization of the Abbasids looked like this, very similar to the ones of the Umayyads, but if you look closely, they have introduced two new positions. The vizier, who was some kind of prime minister, so he was the one who led the government, so the caliph could retire and think on, mystical or religious stuff. So basically, the caliph retired from politics, and the vizier was in charge. The vizier, as I said, is like a prime minister, and there were even dynasties of viziers. Okay, so some viziers used to pass the position to their sons. Another, and the vizier was some kind of a Persian figure, so it's again part of the Persian heritage the Abbasid took when they were caliphs. Another position was the Diwan. The Diwan was like a finance minister. He was in charge of the treasure and some other things, and in charge of collecting taxes and controlling the national treasure. Then we had the same positions as we saw before: the governors of the provinces, on one side the valley, on the other side the Qaid, and the Qadi, the supreme judge on Islamic law, and the ulama, who was wise men in religious matters. So now let's see something about Islamic art. Now that we have seen how the three main caliphates ended, what we have today is many different countries that in which most of the population are Muslims, but we don't have an Islamic empire as they had during the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, up to the 13th century. Okay, so the main characteristic of the Islamic art is that they do not represent human or animal figures. In general, there are some exceptions actually, but depending on how strict they were, the caliphs, some of them, let's say, allowed to have representation of humans and animals, and some others didn't. This is the typical geometrical decoration that you will find in many Islamic buildings, mosques, of even private houses. They made out of wood, or they painted it on the walls as fresco painting, or they made tiles with this kind of decoration. Very, very typical. The main building is the mosque. In this mosque, which is the Dome of the Rock and is located in Jerusalem, you can see all these features that I told you. The geometric decoration in the walls, tiles all over all through the upper side of the walls. Epigraphic decoration, calligraphy. They use the epigraphs, the calligraphy, a lot as an element of decoration, since they are not using, as I said before, a human or animal representation. And this specific mosque is it's also influenced by the Byzantine art, as you can see in this golden dome. A very important place because it's called the Dome of the Rock, because in the inside there is a rock from where allegedly Muhammad ascended to heaven. And that rock is the same, according to Christian tradition, is the same one where Abraham was about to sacrifice his son Isaac until God told him to stop. So that's why it's so relevant. This is the Umayyad Great Mosque in Damascus. I saw this mosque to you before, but from an aerial view. This is the inside of the courtyard, and again you can see the arches and the geometrical decoration, and etc., etc. This is the fountain of the ablutions, because Muslims, when they go to pray, they are supposed to be clean in order to pray to God. So that's why there is always a fountain in any mosque. This is the mosque of Karouyan in Tunisia. And this mosque marks a style in which many other mosques in this area are going to be built. On the front side we have the minaret. This tower is called minaret, and it's the place from where the imam calls people to pray. Today they normally use speakers, which is much more comfortable than going up and down the whole day singing the song of calling to prayer. Then we have these others, the courtyard, obviously, the fountain, which is in the middle. Then we have here the prayer hall. And at the bottom, we have the backside. The backside is important because it's known as the Qibla, and it's always oriented pointing at Mecca, because Muslims are supposed to pray pointing at Mecca. And in the middle of the Qibla, there is this niche called the Mihrab, which is a holy space in which the Quran is placed. It's a very special place in the middle of the Qibla. Okay, this is another very important mosque, famous mosque. It's called Ibn Tulum, and it's in Cairo, Egypt. The mosque of Ibn Tulum has this very peculiar construction in the middle, which is the fountain of ablutions. But other than that, it follows the same outline of construction as Karouyan Mosque. This one is the Mosque of Cordoba. It was started to build in the times of the first emirate, Abdurrahman I, that prince from the Umayyad family who fled from Damascus before being killed by the Abbasids. Yeah, that guy. So he started the construction, but it suffered many expansions. So they were working on it for, let's say, almost 300 years. Sorry. So as you can see, here is the minaret, which today is being transformed in a bell tower, because it's no longer a mosque. Today is Cordoba's cathedral. And the courtyard, full of orange trees, beautiful building. And the prayer hall, a very, very big prayer hall, one of the biggest ones. Here in the middle, what you can see is this cross shape, which is the Christian cathedral that they built on top of the mosque after Cordoba was taken by the Christians during the Spanish reconquest or Reconquista. This is the mosque of Isfahan in the city of Isfahan, which today is Iran, in the country of Iran. And this type of mosque are called Iwan mosque. Iwan mosque. What is the Iwan? The Iwan is this construction, this huge gate that has been taken or is influenced by the Persian palaces. So there are 4 Iwans. This is the main one because here is the prayer hall. Another one here, another one here, and another one that we cannot see that would be in across the courtyard from this one here. This arch, by the way, is called keel arch because it looks like the keel of a boat. It's called keel arch. And look, here you see some paintings, some representations of the Ayatollahs. The Ayatollahs are like supreme leaders of Islam and politics in Iran, because Iran, as I said before, it's a Shia country, it's not Sunni. So among some other differences, they are not so strict in the representation of the human figure. And that's why we can see these paintings here in Isfahan Mosque. This is Hagia Sophia, which was built as a Christian church in times of Justinian in the 6th century AD. And when the Turks took over Constantinople in 1453, they were so impressed about the magnificence and the beauty of this church, this basilica, that they decided to turn it into a mosque, and they decided also to build any other mosque following the same style, with all the domes and the central floor plan and so forth. That's why if you go to Istanbul, you will see not only Hagia Sophia but many other mosques built in the same style. Well, regarding their artistic decoration, they use profusely the wavy lines. There are wavy lines everywhere, and they have this kind of order vacui, so there are very few empty spaces. Everything is covered with decoration. These wavy lines are called arabesque decoration, and also is mixed with lattice work and geometrical shapes. So normally they combine all of these things: the lattice work, the geometric shapes, the wavy lines, the arabesque, as I said. And these elements of art in which the plaster is hanging from the ceiling or from the arches is what we call mocarabe. It looks like stalactites because somehow Islamic art is to resemble nature, or to resemble the union of mankind and nature. So that's why they pay attention to natural elements, or elements that resemble nature, like plants and this mocarabe decoration, etc., etc. And all these wavy shapes, they also resemble nature. These are some of the arches they used. This is the Aljaferia Palace in Zaragoza, Spain. And this arch is called mixtilinear because it's like a mixture of several different lines, square lines, round lines, etc. This is the famous horseshoe arch that they took from the Visigoths. In this case, they are using a set of arches in the same style, in the same horseshoe style, so that's why we call geminate arches. And again, between the arches and on top of the arches you will see all this arabesque decoration full of wavy lines and some geometrical shapes all the way through. This is another type of arch they call lobed arch, because these are lobes. So the arch is built making several lobes, and that's why it's called that way. It's as simple as that. This is typical from Islamic art, and you will find it in very different places. This is Aljaferia Palace again, in Zaragoza, and this is the epigraph or calligraphy decoration. These are capitals and the top of the columns, and this is where they include, or one of the parts they include, because you can find it anywhere, this kind of epigraph decoration or calligraphy. Okay, normally in this calligraphy you will find verses from the Quran, or the history of the palace, or the history of the kings, stuff like that. This is Alhambra in Granada. And well, here you can see some of these Mocharabe arches that we've seen before, combined with geometrical shape. If you look at the background, combined with epigraph decoration. So all the display of Islamic decoration in one single place. Well, I said before that they don't represent a human figure, but what we see here is an exception. This is a castle from the desert. It's a castle called Qasr Amra, and it's in Jordania. Well, in the inside there are some fresco painting, and as you can see, they represent human figures. Here is a naked woman. It looks like she's taking a bath or something like that, and some other people here at the background. So, as I said before, the human representation was forbidden in times of very strict acceptance of the precepts, and in times that those precepts were not so strictly implemented, then we will find some human representations. All right, and this is Alhambra again. This is the famous Patio de los Leones, with the Fountain of the Lions right in the middle, and it's a very good example of the harmony of the forms, the harmony of the shapes, the equilibrium, the symmetry between the different elements of architecture of Islamic art that we can find in their palaces or mosques. And well, that's basically it. I hope everything is understood. If you have a question or anything to add, please you may send me an email or make any comment. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.